Yes, Sean Riley, 500 Washington Street, representing Mr. and Mrs. Greeno on Rockland Street. This is just a conveyance of a 4-foot wide triangle to achieve zoning compliance. The Greenos had previously been to the zoning board asking for a 4-foot variance, and the variance was denied. So they were required to try to purchase the property from a neighbor, which they were able to work that out. And Kyle Garvey, the surveyor engineer, has submitted the plan, which will bring conformity to the zoning. I think it's 87 square feet or 85 square feet, if I recall. Abington zoning bylaws require 110 feet of frontage and then 110 feet of lot width at the front yard setback line. And because the lot has a slight, it's not perpendicular, the existing house is just under 4 feet away from the lot line, 4 feet short of being 110. Thank you.
Town of Abington Planning Board will hold a public hearing pursuant to ULC 40A5 on Friday, October 16, 2020, 5:30 p.m. at Abington Town Hall, 500 Douglas Way, Abington, Massachusetts. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide interested parties with an opportunity to comment on the following proposed amendments to the Town of Abington. Number of recreational marijuana retailers and/or recreational marijuana delivery only retailers permissible within the town's marijuana overlay zoning district to from 25% or 20% to 50% of the number of licenses issued within the town for the retail sale of alcoholic beverages not to be drunk on the premises. The complete text of the proposed amendment is on file with the office of the town clerk at Abington Town Hall, 500 Glenwood Way, Abington, Massachusetts, 02351, and is available for inspection during regular business hours, and is also posted on the town's website at so forth. And that was advertised in the Brockton Enterprise. With the dates.
and 10-9, I believe. 10-9.
On 10/9 and
10-2.
10/2, 7 and 14 days
Yep.
before.
This time around, it takes 20 minutes to get out of lunch.
Somebody want to,
We voted you chairman.
someone want to speak on the motion, on the article?
Good evening, members of the Abington Planning Board. Michael Nashawati, Nashmack LLC. I put together a letter for the members of the board regarding this hearing tonight. It states that when the original Section 175-24-3D was passed, it was passed based on this information from both the state and local council. So this letter here that I put together shows some information regarding the language that was given to the town prior to enacting this ordinance, and it just shows how the ordinance was enacted based on misrepresentations of what the town was allowed to do in regards to cannabis permitting. If you would like to take a look, I'd be happy to hand it over. Otherwise, I am the owner of the petitioner for this citizen's petition. So if there's any questions that the board may have, I'll do my best to answer them.
Fine, thank you. And to expound on that to some degree is that at the town meeting, as you see with your letters that you have for the benefit of those in attendance, that there was some confusion on the minimum and the maximum number of marijuana licenses. The town chose to take 20% of the 10, which would give us 2 licenses, and that's what we determined that we would go with. However, at town meeting, in the presentation, it was somewhat mentioned that that was the maximum, but however, it was the minimum. We had to have 20%, but we could go as high as 50%. And that's what that discussion is. However, the town voted to have 20%, so as far as I'm concerned, that was legitimate, and that's what we have. But this article that's been put in by petition asks that we increase that to 50%, which would mean that we could have up to 5 marijuana facilities in the town of Abington. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on the subject? Yes, Mr. Shea. If you could use the microphone and give us your address.
Joseph Shea, 3 Wyman Road. I object to the petitioner's use of the word misrepresentation was used. I don't think there was misrepresentation. There may have a confusion. There may have a subsidy may have stated incorrectly, but misrepresentation gives the impression that there were lies told. I consider that a completely, based on what I know of the situation, I consider an inaccurate statement, and it does not give me a great deal of feeling of confidence in the plaintiff. Thank you.
Thank you. And to make that clear, that is exactly the case, that we were informed by the Commonwealth that Commission that there was 2. However, others said differently, but the people on the in the town of Abington were made aware that it would be a maximum of 2, which was 20%. But so it was not anything that was done intentionally by anybody in the town. Are there any other comments? Yes, Mr. Nashaway.
Michael Nashawati again. I did not mean to indicate that there was any sort of intentional misleading to the town. I guess the Cannabis Control Commission, they put on a marijuana informational forum on April 27th, 2018. And it was right after the Cannabis Control Commission commissioners were put into place. I'm not sure why, but the commissioner who spoke stated, quote, "Under the law, you are allowed up to 20% of retail establishments based upon the number of liquor stores you have. So whatever number of liquor stores you have, you are allowed up to 20% of that for marijuana establishments." The Cannabis Control Commission issued a statement not long after, guidance for municipalities stating that the commission respects local control that is granted to municipalities under 94G and encourages communities to consider how cannabis commerce fits into their long-term municipal planning process. This may include limiting the number and type of marijuana establishments, but there is no requirement that communities take that action. I think the issue that my business was the third business to request a host community agreement from the town of Abington. I think we delivered our host community requests 2 days after the two host community requests that were granted were submitted due to property issues. But during the May 21st, 2018 Abington Town Meeting, certain statements and representations were made by town council. And if you watch the YouTube video, I've provided a link that shows the actual recording. Town council states that it's a maximum of 2 allowed. Planning board member Rick Collins then from the stand interjects and says it's a minimum of 2 allowed. The town moderator and the town council converse for a minute, and the town moderator decides that he's going to go with the town council's interpretation, which makes sense. At that time, the ordinance was not in place yet, and that's just a material error in the interpretation of the law, which, along with the additional tax revenue that Abington would see from another retail shop, there is interest to bring not only a retail shop into Abington, but a cultivation facility, a manufacturing facility, and those do not deal directly with consumers. Those would be wholesale transactions only. And a third component, my business, me and Gregory McDonald, we were certified economic empowerment applicants by the Cannabis Control Commission back in 2018, based on growing up in an area of disproportionate impact, as well as meeting certain other criteria that the state had laid out. One of the benefits of this economic empowerment certification is that the state is considering a draft amendment, which they're voting on later this week or next week, that allows a delivery operation to take place directly to consumers outside of the municipality's boundaries. But the municipality will still see the 3% local tax from all sales that are made outside of the municipality's boundaries. I think that has the potential to bring Abington significant tax revenue. California, it's a much more mature recreational cannabis market than Massachusetts. They got a jump start on us by about 6 or 7 years. At this point in time, almost 50% of all recreational cannabis sales in California are made via home delivery. There's interest in bringing a delivery business into Abington, and it requires a retail. It's treated on the state level and the town level just like a retail. It's considered a non-storefront retailer. So in order to bring that business to Abington, it would require an amendment to 175-24-3D.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Board members? Rick?
So, I remember the town meeting. It was a very confusing discussion and debate that we had. And ultimately, I think the focus was on just allowing something in the town, considering the town voted in favor of recreational marijuana the previous year. So just for clarification for those in attendance here and those at home, The town has issued the 2 existing permits that it's allowed to. One has gone through the site plan process with the planning board and is planning to open, they say, first quarter of next year. They got delayed with the COVID, and they were opening another facility in Worcester. The second license, they're still trying to get their site plan approved, and it's been a struggle to get it to this point. So those 2 those 2 permits have been issued. So one concern and that I have is allowing these 2 facilities to essentially have a monopoly or an exclusive license in the town of Abington and shutting out all other forms of competition. And, you know, I don't think this is gonna be a situation where we're gonna have a Dunkin' Donuts in every corner, like we already do in this town. I don't think you're gonna have a pot shop in every corner. But if the market bears that the town of Abington can host more than 2, I think that's up to the proponents to be able to say, yes, we can make this work. And there is a couple of really interesting aspects to this specific plan. There's a manufacturing and cultivation, which means that they'll sell to other shops. And when they sell at wholesale to other shops, Abington gets the tax revenue. And if they do a delivery business, and they deliver to Weymouth, which currently doesn't allow retail facilities, or Braintree, which currently doesn't allow retail facilities, Abington gets the sales tax revenue. They have a number that they propose what this could mean in terms of money for Abington. And I've learned long ago not to believe developers' numbers. But even if you'd consider half of what they could do for sales, we're talking it's a significant 6-figure addition to the town's tax revenue, all from a commercial business. Maybe it doesn't work out, but I don't like the idea of giving these 2 other places an exclusivity license. That I think this is a situation where we need the market to bear it out, and the towns who already have these open, we haven't heard horror stories coming out, aside from traffic, because so many people wanted to go and buy. And the more that shops these open, we haven't had those opening day issues. There's a lot of rules that come with this. The police are going to know these businesses very well. They all have safety plans that they have to go through. They're highly regulated. I don't see why the town shouldn't vote to lift the cap. I think 5, if one of them is a delivery business, or, I mean, I just don't think we should be saying that, no, you can only have so many, I guess. So, I hope, I'll be voting in favor of this, and I hope other people will be too.
Bruce?
When the town passed to allow the shops to come into town, I think we looked at it as a revenue perspective. I'm not crazy about this, but that's just my perspective. But I mean, I can understand the revenue aspect of it for the towns. The towns that have allowed multiple shops have gained significant municipal revenue. And we all know in these pandemic times, communities are hurting for revenue. Mr. Collins said something about 2 shops limiting the competition. I would be scared if you had every one of these on a corner. I don't think we quite have a Dunkin' Donuts on every corner. It seems that way to people, but, you know, I'm in favor of competition, but I wouldn't want to have one of these on every corner. And if you've watched these meetings, you know, when we've considered these things, traffic is really a key aspect in planning any of these things. I mean, that's my background. And, you know, traffic concerns and other concerns of the neighbors around these things. We carefully consider, you know, the traffic and the drainage and the effects on the neighborhood, and, you know, we listen to concerns. So when we go through the permitting process, and it does take a long time, we carefully consider all the aspects. You know, we have to do this within the planning and zoning laws that we're bound by. So, again, as I recall, I think one of the key arguments at town meeting for these things in the first place was the revenue that they generate for the town. And they do generate significant revenue for the town. And rest assured that when these proposals are brought before the planning board, we carefully consider them, and we look at all the aspects, the traffic, and we require them to have extensive traffic engineering plans and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think perhaps lifting the cap and having more than two is a good idea. But just know that every one of these proposals will be vetted very carefully by the state and federal, whatever authorities vet them, and on the local level by your planning board, who will, vet every one of these plans and proposals. So, those are my comments. Thank you.
It's not like they could be on every corner either, it's just a certain section of town that we
Right.
designate an overlay district.
Yeah, that would scare me if they weren't every corner.
Quick question, if I can ask. Yes. The delivery piece of this, you say that the CCC is about to hand down some regulations regarding it. If that changes, if they don't do what you expect them to do, does that mean rest of this goes away, or is that just a piece that you'll?
Absolutely not. Currently, what's in place is more of a delivery courier service for economic empowerment applicants like myself. What that means is we're allowed to sort of Uber product from retail stores to consumers. Financially, that model, the CCC determined, just doesn't make sense. The price is already too, high around here out of retail stores. So in order for the delivery courier model to make any sort of business sense, it just doesn't. And when the state created this law back on the 2016 ballot initiative, this social equity piece was a huge portion of why it was passed in the first place. And the reason that the state created the economic empowerment program, in which they received over 500 applications, and myself, Greg, and 123 other individuals were the ones who received it, was because we've been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. They have a definition for that. And this delivery model, the draft amendment already passed. It already went through a first phase of public comment. They reconvened. They put the changes in place to make it a more financially feasible model, in which would be allowed to warehouse product, would be allowed to buy directly from wholesalers, warehouse the product, take orders, go out. You take orders a couple days in advance. You get your routes done. You try to section it off, and you have your fleet of vehicles that goes out and makes these deliveries. From 9 to 7 or whatever the hours may be. But it's a more financially feasible model that has a lot of public support, and obviously, things could change, but it's looking very promising that the state's going to put this into law within the next week or two.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just is each one of them considered a separate license?
So the state determines that they're each considered retail licenses. Obviously, a retail storefront is a retail license.
So if you have a retail store, a delivery, and a growing facility, it's all separate licenses? So it
Yeah, they're all
counts.
separate host community agreements and license applications with the state, but only the delivery and the retail storefront count against Abington's cap. Currently, there's nothing preventing us from moving a cultivation and manufacturing facility into our lot on Adams Street. The only issue is it's tough to make it work with such a, we're allowed up to 100,000 square feet of cultivation space. This lot allows us at first to start right around 9,500 square feet, 10,000 square feet. So in order for it to make, it's just such a huge investment off the bat. The HVAC systems for these cultivation facilities alone can cost 7 figures. So in order for it to make sense for us as a small startup company, economic empowerment, local business, we're all Braintree guys. Some of our teams own some businesses in Abington. We just need to have that that retail revenue in place as well. And we want to be good neighbors to the town of Abington. I grew up in Braintree my whole life. I love the South Shore. I love this area. Would never want to do anything to...
You're considering doing, not that it has anything to do with this, you're considering doing growing and retail on that same site?
Oh, yeah.
And just,
Two separate...
Right.
There's a warehouse, L-shaped warehouse where we'd do our commercial operation, and then a retail storefront.
It sounds like a totally integrated operation. You'll grow, you'll sell retail and you'll sell wholesale, so in terms of like a steel mill, that would be a totally integrated operation.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Just to clarify one point, and maybe the moderator wants to clarify this, we are not voting at the special town meeting on NASHMAC's proposal. There is nothing in front of us.
No, we're in the queue, I guess.
Right.
So I don't know if this town's going to consider any additional licenses granted as new licenses with no queue that we would be hopefully, you know, right at the front of the line for, or if we're going to be considered extending the previous queue. Because when I first submitted my host community agreement back in 2018 or 19 to the town, we were told that if anything happens to the 2 retailers that signed permits, you know, would be considered. So we're in that queue. The reason we asked for 50% on this citizen's petition is because, you know, we're not so sure that we're number 3 in that queue. I think we should be or close to it, and you know, we just wanted to 50%. It's a nice whole even number that, you know, would protect us in case another business came up and asked if they could have a retail license.
The difficulty with the article as it is written is that it will allow 5. If the article was written a little differently and it said that, or any other action, we could have limited it to 3 or 4. But because of the way it's written, we cannot do it on town floor to reduce it from 5 to 4 or 3.
You can't do that on
Yes.
town floor, is that?
Yeah, I believe the amendment.
He said that would be within the scope.
So if
Oh, we could reduce it at town meeting? Oh, I was on the
the town
understanding
could
we
give us an
couldn't.
assurance in some way that, you know, the additional licenses would not be considered part of the queued licenses, but instead 2 new licenses, then we'd have no problem bringing it down to a 40% ratio from liquor stores to cannabis businesses. But that's obviously whatever the town decides is best for the town.
So what you're saying is that if an amendment was suggested, as Mr. Smith has mentioned, and Mr. Riley has said is okay, then you'd be amenable to something like that.
So long as we could get some sort of assurance that we wouldn't be left with only 1 license when we need 2 for our business model.
If we're gonna vote this, we're gonna vote it as written though, right?
We got to vote what?
Vote it as written, if we're gonna vote
Yeah,
this?
we'll vote it that way, and then the town meeting can make a determination if they want to reduce it.
I mean, I wouldn't want to drop it only because I don't like the precedent of lifting the cap only for a specific proposal. That we're lifting it, he could qualify for it, another one could if they meet their standards. I would hate, it's almost like a spot zoning thing, we're only changing the zoning for this one business. I'd rather just, if we're gonna lift it, let's allow some additional competition. Whoever gets it, gets it. But, I mean, that's the thing we have to take into consideration. We're not voting on Mr. Nashawati's project at town meeting.
That's correct.
Yeah, well,
What-
as Rick said, it's a tourism and zoning, spot zoning. You can't have a specific zoning article to benefit one business.
Yep, I understand that, and we're all for competition and, you know, free market.
And so if town meeting votes to do this, they still have to go through the community host agreement process, through the town manager and the board of selectmen. They would have to have a community meeting, I believe still, community-wide meeting to go
Yeah.
over, to meet neighbors, go over any questions. They'd still have to come before this board for their site plan review to make sure that the traffic works and this building looks nice and all those pieces. So there's still a bunch of steps in this process.
correct.
This isn't the final vote, or special town meeting isn't the final vote on this.
I mean, I see this as a series of steps tonight. We have to vote, as a board, we have to vote on this as written, but at town meeting, it could be amended, if that was the will of town meeting.
Yes, Sean?
Sean Riley, Town of Washington Street. I'm speaking as moderator only. I don't want to get into the weeds.
No pun intended.
Yeah, sorry about that. Jeez.
Caught that, come on. worked
No, I didn't
hard.
even mean
don't
that.
get like that.
So the proposal that's been petitioned is to increase from 20% to 50%. Because it's a zoning amendment, the planning board has to make a recommendation to town meeting. So at town meeting, the planning board will make the motion, the first motion anyhow. So if this board decides, you could make the recommendation that you approve 50%, you can make a motion for 40%, you can make a motion to pass over, to not accept the change and leave it at 20%. but it has to be somewhere between 20 and 50. Regardless of what your motion is, any other registered voter could stand up and ask to amend your motion if they wanted to. But it's really for the board to kind of start the discussion with whatever motion you feel is appropriate.
Yeah, it's a step process.
Yep.
Tonight, and then town meeting floor.
Yes, and it will be required 2/3. If there's an amendment, it's a majority vote whether the amendment passes or not. And then the final vote to whether to approve the change from 20% to whatever the number is, that's a 2/3 vote requirement in order to enact the change.
It's good that we're laying this out, you know, I mean, if people at home watching this, people in this room, just so they understand the steps.
Correct.
And of course, it'll be in the meeting minutes too, so.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other comments from the public attending? If not, if the board has nothing else to say, then we have a motion to close the hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to support the petition as printed in the town meeting warrant.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. The hearing is closed. The meeting is closed for that. We're all set?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion, second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you, Joe.